What's up guys, this is Chris here, and today we're going to be going over my 5 favorite red dots. Now I'm going to be talking about a couple for handguns, a couple for rifles, and I'm going to be going over the optics and the brands that I run for my personal use. The optics that I choose to run for my own personal time, but also optics that I prefer to run on review guns because I know they're going to be durable, reliable, long lasting, and have all the features that I actually want. Now to preface right off the bat, this is not going to be a best optics for the money video. Some of these are going to be a little more expensive, but that being said, these are the ones that I choose for my own use, and that's what you guys asked for, so that's what you're going to get. I've been doing gun videos now for about 10 years, and we got on the optics train fairly early. I've been shooting rifles with red dots on them for a couple of decades, and handguns with optics pretty consistently now, at least a couple times a week, for about a decade or so. I have at least 100,000 rounds on red dots on pistols, and at least 100,000 on rifles. I shoot about 1,000 rounds a week, and we get to use a variety of different optics on different guns than most people do, I imagine, in their personal life. I get to try the new Vortex when I want to, the new Sig when I want to. So these are just all going to be a collection of the ones that I like the best through the reviewing process, and that I then put on my personal guns and like them on that as well. So let's get started with an old classic in at number 5. And yes, I still like the Trijicon RMR. Now the Trijicon RMR is kind of seen as old news lately, although I believe the Type 2 is one of the best still on the market. This is the RMR Type 2, as you can see here. Now the RMR, I believe, was released around 2005 or 6, and ever since then it has been kind of the gold standard of optic that people choose to put on their pistols. It was like one of the first absolutely rugged pistol optics that kind of changed people's minds about optics on handguns. I know you young folks can't imagine this, but there was a time when people thought that red dots were not reliable enough to put on handguns. And the reason for that is pretty simple. It goes for a ride. Well, on a rifle, the optic is static on top of a receiver, and it doesn't take quite the punishment a pistol optic does with the slide cycling back and forth all the time. So it takes quite a beating. On top of that, handguns have a tendency to hit on stuff and hit stuff in the holsters, and you go roll over prone, you break your optic, that kind of thing. So the RMR was one of the first pistol optics that actually addressed that. Pistol optics are nothing new. They're new to the tactical community, but they've been used in competition since the early 80s. I believe actually since the late 70s, somewhere in there. And the RMR was really the first guy that changed most people's minds on the reliability, durability aspect. On top of that, it's got a pretty solid window. It actually has the U-notch up there, which limits a little bit of the window that you see through, which is why these aren't very popular in competition and stuff like that. But for self-defense duty use, that's more than enough window. I have no problem with it myself, and I shoot at about the same speed as I do any other optic, even though the window is slightly smaller, because there isn't a lot of actual sides of the optic that you see in your visual plane, so I can kind of see the whole thing as I pass by, and it doesn't really bother me. I also have a gigantic amount of experience on RMRs. I think I own about 20 of these, somewhere in there. Old ones, new ones, all kinds of them, from different reticle sizes to different colors. My preferred favorite is going to be somewhere between a 2.5 and 5 MOA dot. I actually like it a little bit crisper because I shoot a lot of long range, and if I want a bigger dot, I can just turn it up. Now, one of the awesome things about the RMR is that it has a really, really good battery life, somewhere between a year and 5 years, depending on how much you use the optic. But one of the big downsides of the RMR is you do have to take it off to change the battery. I would say that's probably the only downside, aside from maybe some battery connection issues due to the same system. Now, the optic is easy to use. It has a plus and a minus. So you plus to go up and you minus to go down. Very simple brightness settings. The other thing that's very simple about it is that it has a very simple flat head adjustment on the actual adjustment of the windage and elevation on the optic, which is great for me because I usually don't have a bunch of tools on me. I can strip a bullet right out of the chamber, and I can adjust my optic if need be, which is something that you can't really do on Sig, Aimpoint, or Holosun, and that is a big downside, especially of the Holosun series, in my opinion. Also, I do feel like the Trijicons are a little bit more reliable than Holosun, and on top of that, the RMR pattern is the standard for pistol cuts. So generally, if you get a gun that is optics ready, it will either come with a RMR plate or it will have one available, and if it's direct milled, it's most likely, if it's a larger optic, it's the RMR platform. So not only do they fit on most guns, they're most available, they're very reliable, they're very durable, and the most proven pistol optic of the last decade. So it's an easy number 5. Now, some of the other downsides are going to be it's relatively expensive, especially compared to the Vortex or the Holosun sell us on optics, the average RMR comes in right around $500, but how much is your life actually worth? Now, in at number 4, we'll switch over here a little bit to a rifle optic, and one of my all-time favorite rifle optics, again, is going to be very expensive, but very durable, kind of seeing a pattern here, and that is going to be the Aimpoint T2. Now, the Aimpoint T2 is obviously the second generation from the T1. They actually have a more affordable versions of this that are very similar, just without night vision settings and a few other things, called the H1 and the H2. The T2 is the premium red dot optic on the market. This is the most expensive red dot that's on this list, and it is also the most durable, time-proven, and trusted optic on this list. For the most part, if you see Special Forces units running red dots, they usually run EOTech or they run Aimpoint, and if they run the mini Aimpoints, they're running this. And the reason for that is this thing is very, very lightweight and very small, so you barely even notice it on your gun. The second thing is it's, again, the most durable optic on the market, in my opinion. This tubular design makes it very durable. There's many, many videos of people just dropping these out of helicopters, running them over with cars, and in my personal experience, I have 4 Aimpoint T2s, and they've never let me down. Now, some of the battery issues that I've had set it back from maybe number 1 to number 4 on this list, and the fact that they cost a little bit over $1,000, I think is very, very expensive and prohibitive to most people, and honestly to me as well. I own a lot more of the optics in front of the list than I do this one, just because of the price alone. $1,000 for an optic is a lot, especially if you're paying $150 for a mount as well. But what you get for your $1,000 is you get an optic that you can dive with 50 meters below the sea. You can throw it out of a helicopter. You can drop it off a train and the thing will still work. There's many, many reliability tests of the T2 where the optic still works and the gun has been dead forever. And it's just one of those things where you pay a lot initially, but you buy once, cry once. This is an optic that will not only be durable and reliable 2 decades from now, but I imagine due to features, it will still hold its own. The optic clarity is pretty clear. The dot is very crisp. And with a rifle dot, I think that's even more important than a pistol dot, because you're gonna be taking these rifle optics out to 100 to 400, even 500 meters, and the clarity and the crispness of the dot matter, especially if you're gonna be putting a magnifier on it. You don't get a lot of fisheye either side. There's no parallax on a red dot. So if you shoot with funny angles, you can still hit your target relatively easily. Now, again, some of the downsides are gonna be the battery life on these aren't always what's advertised. I think it's like 5 years battery life, and I usually get about 1 year or 2 years out of these, and then obviously the price is extremely expensive. The last thing I don't like about the optic is they have proprietary caps on here, of which you have to use these little posts in order to zero the dot, which sucks, especially when you lose these caps, or if it's cold outside, or if your hands are sweaty, if it's really hot. These caps are very difficult to use. It's much easier to use a screwdriver or a bullet on a flathead surface. So I would prefer it had that, but at the end of the day, it's no big deal. This is one of those you probably zero, leave it on your gun for 10 years, and it's still gonna work when you pick it up. So Aimpoint T2 is extremely awesome, but pretty expensive as well. Now at number 3, we're gonna be talking about my favorite micro optic, and that is going to be the Sig Romeo series. This one's the Sig Romeo X, which is the enclosed design. So this is an enclosed optic, very similar to the tubular design of the Aimpoint T2, but this is a square. Now, this optic is the most reliable micro optic I've ever had. You see the pattern here? This thing is super durable, it's super reliable, and has a very long battery life of over 1 year before you change the battery. What's nice about this optic as opposed to the RMR, which is why it's up front, is not only is it smaller and it's thinner, so it can fit on thinner slide profiles like maybe the Shadow or a 1911 or your Micro 9s, but it also has a battery tray on the side here. So you don't have to take the optic off and re-zero it to put the battery in. You take it out and put it back in. That is, again, the big downside of the RMR, and which is why it's so low on the list. This one is not only easier to zero and smaller and lighter, and it fits on smaller optics, but it also is, again, enclosed. With an RMR here, like you see here, you can get a lot of stuff inside the window, especially if you carry appendix or if you're carrying the gun at all. You have a tendency to get lint and dumb shit inside that. Now, that's not going to make the gun inoperable, but it is kind of a pain in the ass. If you're out shooting in an open holster, for example, in the rain, you can pool up water in there, and that won't kill the RMR, but it will make it very, very difficult to see through the optic. Whereas with an enclosed optic like the Romeo X, you just don't have those problems. Now, there's more affordable versions of this micro dot. The Sig Romeo Romeo X is essentially a copy of the Holosun 507, 509 series, and I prefer the Sigs because I feel they've been more durable and I feel the battery life has been longer. At the end of the day, I almost always err on the side of reliability, durability. If it doesn't work, what's the point of the features? Now, another cool thing about it is the brightness setting is over here, very minimalist, very small, a little bit more difficult for me to run with my big dumb hands, and probably the only thing I don't like about the Sig Romeo X is the fact that it has these incredibly small micro adjustments that you have to have a special tool for, which I think is fucking stupid. The reticle color is also a little bit bluer than maybe like the Aimpoint or the MRO HD or something like that, but it's still very, very good, and the dot is very crisp, and it's easy to hit at long distance, even with this micro optic. Now, the smaller, the lighter the optic, the better for concealed carry because you don't feel it as much on your stomach, but you will have a harder time acquiring targets in the very limited window of the Romeo X. So bear that in mind when you're picking up optics and dots. Make sure to pick them up, put them about arm's length and look through them and see what sight picture that you like. Sometimes it comes down to shape. Now, all of these optics, including other optics as well, come in different colors. My preference is red for all of them. I prefer red. I pick up red better, and that's just what I like. But if you like a square optic that's green, more power to you. As long as it's durable and reliable, why not? So Sig Romeo X is around $450, making it relatively affordable for as reliable and durable that it is. So it's an easy number 3. In at number 2, we have my favorite rifle red dot, and that is going to be the Trijicon MRO. Now, if you would ask me a year ago or 2 years ago, I would have told you that it was actually the Aimpoint T2. But since then, the MRO has been updated to the MRO HD and the MRO SD. So you get a lot of features and upgrades on the MRO that you used to, while still remaining well under the cost of a Aimpoint T2. And that's the big selling point of this. These are as reliable and as durable in my experience as the T2. They have just as good a battery life for the most part. The battery is easy to adjust and remove up here. The dials are easy to remove. You have night vision settings if you want. And I like the MRO even better because it's, again, easier to adjust for me with a flathead screwdriver or a bullet, and that's just personal preference. If you like the Aimpoint, go with the Aimpoint. There's nothing wrong with it. Another thing I like a little bit better about the MRO is going to be it has a larger objective lens. So I don't know if it does allow me to shoot quicker, but it sure as hell makes me feel that way because I have a slightly larger field of view when I shoot. And when I shoot them between the two of them, if I shoot an MRO and then I shoot a T2, I feel squished into the T2 reticle. So I actually just prefer the MRO. On top of that, the standard MRO comes in for around $500, which is half the price of the Aimpoint T2. The MRO HD and SD, where you get different reticle choices and you get a little bit less fisheye, a little bit clearer window, a little bit crisper dot, all features on par with the T2, are still around $700. So definitely cheaper, definitely more available, and in my opinion, honestly, a better product these days. That being said, that's just my personal preferences. That's what I like. If you're looking for an absolute bomb-proof, reliable red dot, they're both gonna pack a punch with no problem. So I prefer the MRO based on the objective lens, the adjustment choices, and the price. But again, Aimpoint's still a great optic. Now, if you're interested in the mounts, before I continue, this is a Unity mount. I like these Unity fast mounts. They come with included iron sights in them, which are pretty cool, and they put me up relatively high. Now, I'm a big boy, and I got a big old head, so I like to be up a little higher, so when I pull the rifle up, I don't have to duck my head down. My point of aim is just right there. And then this one is a 193 ScalarWorks mount, which I also use a great deal. These are very, very lightweight, and these are very easy to take on and off, so I use these an awful lot. The majority of my mounts are actually ScalarWorks, and I really appreciate them. They send these down to me for me to review every once in a while, and I appreciate that because I've bought, I think, right around 24 of these is how much I like these. Now, before we get into number 1, I do want to offer some honorable mentions that didn't really make it into the list, but they are good, especially for the money. First off, I did mention the Holosun series. The Holosun AIM is a square optic. I like that a lot, and if you're looking for sort of a micro EOTech, that's not a bad choice if you're not worried about buying Chinese. Also, the Holosun runs the 507K, I believe it's called, is the micro optic, and that is a really good optic, especially for the money if you're looking for a more affordable version of the Sig Romeo. Also, they have a 507 series that is affordable and enclosed that will fit the RMR pattern as well, and all those are going to be about 2/3 the price of the Trijicon. So if you want to get it for a little bit less money and still have good features, maybe not quite as durable, the Holosun series is great. Lately, we've been testing the Vortex series, and as much as I like Vortex a lot, they didn't make the list because even though I like their prices, around $200, $250, we've had some long-term durability issues with the micro optics, so much so so that I don't even like using them anymore. They have every optic that I purchased so far. I have 3 in a row, and they have battery connection issues while we shoot them, and the dot goes on and off.
Okay.
It's like flickering in and out of life.
Huh.
So I can use them for review optics, but I would never use that for self-defense. I'd rather just have iron sights than an optic that works half the time. That being said, the XL version, the big version that I see a lot in competition, it's a Leopold Delta Point profile, and it seems to work really, really well. Now, with that being said, let's get right into the pretty obvious number one. And if you watch the channel, I bet you can guess. My favorite pistol optic is the Trijicon SRO. Now, the Trijicon SRO is one of the best optics on the planet. It's been around for a very, very long time, and it is my favorite optic to shoot with. I like the fact that it comes with a lot of features, the glass quality and the crispness dot of the RMR, and I like the fact that it has a very, very large window to it and a very circular window. Now, the Vortex XL has a little bit wider of a window, but it's a square window, and for whatever reason, my eyes just prefer the circular one. Now, the SRO actually has a battery compartment on the top here that you can take the battery out and you don't have to re-zero it every time like you do the RMR, which is very nice, but it still has the same battery adjustments and the same windage and elevation adjustments that I prefer on the RMR. So it's just a big ass RMR with a circular window. And I want to have a tie for number one, and I also do want to mention the RMR HD, which is just a giant version of the RMR, which I've been running a lot lately. Now, I only have about 2,000 rounds through that optic, so I didn't want to put it on this list necessarily, but it is a front runner for my favorite optic of the year. Just a big ass RMR after all. Reliable, durable, what's not to love? Now, these optics, the Trijicon SRO, can be found in a whole litany of different reticle options, anywhere from 1 MOA up to like 10. And I think all of these optics can have different reticle options. They can also get a circle dot option if you want to, although I prefer the standard dot. And then the prices range from about $500 to $700 depending on what you get. If you get the RMR HD, it's around $750 to $800. Very expensive for an optic, so if you're looking for a good old duty optic, the standard RMR will do just fine if you don't need that big window. Overall, again, this isn't a list of like the best optics for the money. All these optics on this list are relatively expensive. All of them come in for around $400 or higher, but it's because I prefer quality, I prefer durability, and if it doesn't have durability, again, what's the point? All these optics I would easily use for self-defense. All of them I would take to a match, and all of them I shoot on the range all the time, and I would trust these with my life. So if you're interested in a very high quality optic, any of these will do. Pick the one that fits your features the best, pick the one that fits your eye the best, pick the color that you like the best, and send it. I think they'll all work great. A dot's a dot after all. It just hovers there. You're the one who pulls the trigger, so make sure to get out and train or it won't make any difference. If you like this video, please like and subscribe. Please help out your local homeless shelters, and remember to recycle. I'll check you later.
Ruckus! Ruckus! What are you doing? Ruckus, did you just drop that gun? Did you just drop that? What are you doing, mister?